Welcome to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast. In this podcast, we talk about books, interview authors, and we discuss their journey to becoming published. Each one has a different but amazing story. My hope is to encourage people to keep reading good books and to help authors find their audience and inspire everyone in their journey, whatever that might be. Welcome to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast. My guest today is Nat Bickel. She is a writer of articles and 2 children's books and has just written her first novel called The Catalyst. I would describe it as a romance with a touch of magical realism to it. And it explores the connections we have between people, the dreams we might have, and it encourages you to take the leap and follow your dreams. It was a very fun read, and I'm really excited to talk to the author today. So, Nat, welcome to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast.
Thanks so much, Art. It has been way too long since we've chatted on a Cozy Christmas podcast, so I'm excited to connect with you again.
That's right, because one of your children's stories was a Christmas story, and that's how we connected probably a couple years ago now.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah, time flies for sure.
I know. I feel like ever since COVID, time doesn't make sense anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's just all a blur.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I am really excited to talk to you about this novel and just the message that it's trying to, or that it expresses. Before we get into all that, though, I love to find out from people some of their favorite authors and books and the stories that inspire them. So do you have a favorite author or 2 or 3?
Of course. So The Catalyst is in the young adult genre. It has some crossover potential, but I do have some favorite young adult authors. So Becca Fitzpatrick is the author of the Hush Hush series, which is all about fallen angels and romance. And I fell in love with her writing in high school. And she quickly became my favorite author because she makes you want to like the bad guy, which is really interesting. And I've held my breath trying to turn pages in her books before. So she always has me on the edge of my seat, which I love. Then
do you have any favorite books that inspire you or that if you recommend to somebody, you have to read this book?
Yeah. So Kristen Hanna, she writes adult fiction, and she wrote The Nightingale, which is a story back in World War II. And she is so incredibly amazing at writing characters where you don't have to question who she's talking about. There's so many books where I feel like I'm reading, I'm like, wait, who is this person? And she has them so clearly defined with their own personalities. But that is such a powerful book, The Nightingale. I think they're turning it into a movie in the next year or so. So it's really, really good. I would highly recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one either. I've said before, this is all my clever way of adding to my to be read pile. So I get some great recommendations.
I'm sure. Yeah. Wide
awesome.
Variety too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What inspires you to tell stories?
Yeah, I think my goal is to move people to action with my words. So whether it's maybe people reevaluating how they're living their life or finding beauty in something that was previously mundane to them, my goal is always to stir up something in readers. And so whenever I feel a story kind of bubbling up, I get so excited and just really feel like I'm writing to someone who is reading it at the time.
Yeah. And I can see that, especially in this novel, just that inspiration to action that you're talking about, and how the main character, struggles with her anxiety, and it kind of becomes crippling at times, but then she's finding ways to deal with it. And well, I don't want to give away too much of the plot there, but that part really resonated with me. And I think probably many your readers will, because who doesn't struggle with those decisions that we have to make, and the what ifs. What if I do this? Or what if I do that? But what if I don't? And, we all struggle with that.
For sure. And the main character, Kelynn, she's a recent college graduate. And especially at that time in your life, every decision feels so big and so weighty and like it could change your life forever. So
Hmm.
anxiety, I think, is prevalent among that age range specifically, but of course, broader too.
Yeah. Yeah. My middle son, just, he's going to turn, 20 this year. And he finished high school, and that was his life. Like, I don't know what to do.
Right?
What if I picked the wrong thing? And okay, you know what? You don't have to decide today. How about you just take a year and figure your life out? And so that
Yeah.
was really helpful. Just to being faced with those big life decisions can be overwhelming.
Yes. And there's so many pressures. And I feel like today a lot of people aren't choosing the college path, which is great, or taking a year off, like your son, to
Hmm.
just kind of sit and think, okay, if I'm going to spend all this money on a university, is it worth it? What do I want to pursue? And I think that that's really wise.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the book here, the catalyst. Where did this story idea come from, and I guess even what's it about? If you could share, your
Sure.
synopsis of it.
Yes. So it's about a recent college graduate named Kelynn, and she has this head full of dreams that are so overwhelming that it causes her to black out when she tries to think about them. So, like you mentioned, all the what ifs, goals, aspirations in life, they just become too much, and she can't really move forward with any decision. And she tries her best to put her thoughts into this mystical opal necklace that's been passed down in her family. But that really only puts her episodes at bay until she meets Clayton. And he starts to make things seem easier in her life, which is quite confusing because Kelynn never wanted love to be a part of her story. And he has a huge secret that could change both of their lives because he has access to Kellynn's opal necklace and is able to kind of watch her thoughts play out like a movie before him. And so he's kind of creating these scenarios that he thinks she would love and paths that he thinks she would like to pursue in life. And this came from my own love story with my now husband because I didn't really want love to be a part of my life either. I had been burned a few times and I just felt like it wasn't going to be a part of my future until I met him. And it just created this insane experience for me. Love does so many big things. It can cause you to question your beliefs, it can cause you to change how you see the world, how you see yourself. And I really wanted readers to feel that ride and that wave and wrestle with all of the vulnerability that comes with falling in love and wrestle with the feeling of also wanting to have independence in a relationship.
I wondered how much, of yourself you were putting in that, because it did really feel, genuine, with just the feelings and the connection, and that was going on there. Yeah. In your journey to become a writer, what brought you to that point? And were you sometimes like your main character, Kelynn, and not sure what decisions to make?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of me in this story. It's a lot of me in my 20s trying to figure out what I want to do in life and dealing with anxiety while also falling in love and just trying to balance everything and feeling like one decision could change my life forever. But so that is a big part of it. And then figuring out when I was going to write this book was really interesting. So it was on my bucket list for a while. And I actually had a family friend who was in a nursing home, and I decided I was going to write to him while he was there. And he has written a couple books, just little stories from his life. And he asked me in a letter, he was like, "When are you going to write a book? Are you ever going to write one?" And I remember telling him, "Yes, it's on my list of things to do one day in my life. I definitely want to be an author." And I remember sending him a mock cover, and all I had on it was the title, which was The Catalyst, because a catalyst is a person or event that can quickly cause change. And
Mhm.
that was happening in my life because I was falling in love at that time as well. And I knew that I wanted to write a story that was going to be the title, but I didn't really know what it was going to be. And that was kind of where it started. And I think he kind of gave me the nudge I needed to start taking steps towards writing.
Would you consider your husband to be a catalyst in your life, or the catalyst in your life, or?
Absolutely. He is definitely a huge catalyst in my life. I feel like I'll come to him with these big ideas or dreams or goals, and he helps me kind of take 20 steps, maybe 100 steps back, and is like, okay, let's breathe for a second. This is exciting, but how can we actually make this happen? So he gives me that pause that I need when I'm on level 10 excited about something.
As a husband, I desperately try to understand my wife. And is there anywhere I can get a necklace like Kelynn has? But I was like, this is a really handy tool to have.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we are very complex creatures,
Yeah.
women. That is so funny.
But I like how he used that because when he was starting to get into her dreams, I'm wondering, is this going to get creepy or what? What?
Mm,
Because that could, in the wrong hands, that could be really awful. But I
hmm
but I love how, and I know this provides some of the conflict of the story. She kind of feels betrayed and all that, but that he's using that for good intentions. Like he wants to help her, and so he's taking what he's learning and he's, like you were saying, designing these things so that she can try out some of her different dreams. And I thought that was a really interesting way to deal with that. I thought that was good.
Yeah, yeah. That was a really fun part to write just because it was kind of her getting to test out the waters of different lives or different paths in her life. And I feel like a lot of us don't really have someone doing that for us, being like, hey, maybe we should give you a taste of this if this is something you want to do, and
Hmm.
pushing us. So yeah, I feel like it's good and bad because, he has a secret that he knows these thoughts of hers, but he's also trying to do good with it.
Right. And so in that sense, it was refreshing just to see. I guess I've been reading too many thrillers lately and mysteries, with predatory men in them or something. I don't know, but I was like, okay, this is a good guy. He's not perfect, but it'd be a boring love story if he was. But
Right, right. That's so funny because I've been reading a lot of young adult fiction lately because sometimes adult fiction can be a little too spicy or have like
right,
scary characters in it that I can't sleep after reading. So
right,
that's part of why I love this genre too.
yeah. Would it be safe to say then that one of the things you explore in this is this idea of like having a soulmate almost? That's kind of the vibe I got.
Yes, I would say I think I believed that when I fell in love with my husband. It's really funny because I actually kind of grew up with him in real life.
Hmm.
We went to the same middle school, same high school, but we didn't really talk or hang out until college. And it's so crazy to have someone that you know in your life and not realize that they're the person you're going to be with. And whenever we did fall in love, it did feel like a soulmate connection. So I did really want Kelynn and Clayton's connection to feel like almost otherworldly or like a force was pulling them together that they couldn't really control.
Yeah, and I know not everyone buys into that, and I get it, but sometimes you just make a connection with somebody, and I like how Clay and Kelynn had that kind of almost instantly, when they first meet. There's just something there that it pulls you into the story. Like, okay, how is this going to unfold? And well, I'm a hopeless romantic, so I think I told you in like the last 50 pages, I got to figure out, I got to read this and get it done so I know what happens. But no spoilers here. So I wanted to talk about one of the quotes from your book. This is towards the end, and Kelynn was talking to Clay, and she said, "Sometimes you just have to leap, take the pressure off of yourself and free fall. You'll grow no matter what choice you make." That was a statement I needed to hear.
Mm,
You know, can we talk a little bit about that? Like just the philosophy of living like that.
hmm
Have you done that? And is, I guess, writing your novel, is that part of that, taking a leap?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because I don't feel like Kelynn can really take her own advice, even though it's great advice for Clayton. She has a hard time doing it herself.
Yeah.
But yeah, with writing this novel, I mean, I had these giant hopes and dreams of getting an agent and going the traditional publishing route. And I fought self-publishing for so long, which I shouldn't have. But I just, for some reason, thought traditional publishing was like the mecca and the only way to really publish a book and be an author and be able to say you're an author. And that's just not true. So I think from that sense, like getting my story out there was helping me grow and beautiful. And it doesn't matter like which decision I made on how to get it out there. It's just the fact that I finally took the leap and said, okay, it's time to publish this. It's time to stop being scared of what people will think and be scared if they don't like it and just actually put myself out there.
But I like what you said there, and what she says about just do it basically, and it takes
Mhm.
that pressure off. You're giving yourself permission to try something new or different or outside of your comfort zone. And one of the things I think that holds us back is, well, what if I fail, or what if nobody
Mhm.
likes it? And what this tells me is to say, well, so what? You will have learned something. You'll grow from this decision. And I really like that attitude in trying something new. That this might be my new favorite thing, or I might hate it, or I might fail. Doesn't matter. I'm curious and want to try it. And worst case scenario, I learned something about myself through the process.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of times we are so worried about what others will think as we're trying something new, but it doesn't matter, even though that's so hard to believe. But I'm so proud that I have this story that is so close to my heart, published in an actual book binding, like so crazy to even hold it. But I did that for me. I didn't do that for anybody else. I just of course, I want readers to love it. Of course, I want readers to walk away feeling like they want to experience love or that they've had a taste of love just from reading my book. But I I'm also just really satisfied with the fact that I did grow, I did learn, I did something really scary, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter really the outcome. It just matters that I did it for me.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I noticed that I'll have to ask you about is, this is a weird place, but in your acknowledgments, you mentioned a couple of things, and one of the things you mentioned was Greta Gerwig's Little Women, and you referenced that ending scene. Could you elaborate on that, and just share what that meant to you, and how this feels as an author?
Absolutely. So I believe it's 2019 adaptation
Mm-hmm.
of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott was very impactful for me. I had finished my book at that time. I believe I was still doing edits, but querying agents. And there's this scene where Jo March, if you've read the movie, or sorry, read the book, seen the movie, she has this manuscript that ends up getting burned by one of her sisters at one point, which is like so devastating as a writer.
Mm.
But she writes it again, makes it better. And it's near the end. It's a scene where she's getting to watch the first physical copy of her book be made and come to life. And it's so cool. She's like in this window watching, I guess, like a factory line of her book go through each process. So it's being sewn together, the pages are being printed, the gold foil's being put on the cover, and you can just see in her eyes that she's just like, wow, this is my work coming to life right now. And I wanted that same feeling, and walking out of that theater just gave me a rejuvenated spirit towards finishing my own novel and getting it out there one day.
Mm. I found that to be a very powerful scene too. I've enjoyed the book, and I had watched the Winona Ryder version
Mm.
many times. Like I said, I'm a hopeless romantic, but so this new film comes out, and it really does have a different perspective on the story, I think. But that scene, it really struck me as, here's this young lady who's created this masterpiece, really, and she's just watching it come and be created, almost when a woman gives birth. Like I've
Mm.
created this thing, and this is now has life, and I've done this marvelous thing. And I don't know what the director was going for in that scene, but it sure worked on me.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that because when I was writing my book, I had a post-it note on my laptop that said, "Your book is your baby."
Mm,
And that just helped me stay motivated of if this book is my baby, like I'm going to take care of it. I am going to work with it. I'm going to put all the love and energy into making it amazing. And that just really helped me stay on track. And it's so funny because I was talking to my husband the other day and he was asking me when I started writing. And I started writing The Catalyst in 2018. And he was like, this is a 6-year-old child at this point. Like, this isn't even a baby anymore. Like, this is a 6-year-old. That's so crazy that it's been like in your world, in your brain for that long. And you've been working that long to get it out there.
Hmm. So this book is self-published then? Is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. What was that process like? I don't know. I can't recall if your children's books are self-published too, or are those through a company, but what was that like for you?
Yeah, so The Christmas Clue is traditionally published through a publisher. And then The Volcano No One Could See, that one I self-published through Amazon. And then The Catalyst I self-published, but it was a much longer process because I I took so many courses and online classes trying to figure out, okay, how do you self-publish a book and do it well?
Hmm.
With my children's book that's self-published, I just did it through Amazon. I didn't own the ISBN, which is something that's very important if you want to take your book to other platforms. So, uh, it's so layered. It's very hard to explain.
Hmm.
Um, but I did find a lot of resources. There's a ton of free resources out there, which is great of other authors who've done it and who want to share their knowledge. But essentially, I've published through a couple different platforms so that my book's available on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. It's available through the Libby app. So if you have a library card, you can read the ebook there. And then the ebook is available everywhere too, Kindle, Apple Books. So that process, making sure I got it everywhere, widely distributed, was very lengthy and so stressful. The morning I was uploading everything, I felt sick to my stomach. I was just like, something's going to go wrong. I know it. But I think it was just because I'd come to kind of the end of my process and it was like, okay, I'm actually doing this. Please do it right, Natalie. Like, do not mess up.
It's the labor and delivery time, right?
Yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have talked to a lot of self-published writers and some that have done both, but they all will say, they love having that the ability to just to control that themselves, to this is mine. I can put out as many as I want in a year or as few, whatever. There's a lot of benefit in that. And, I think our world is better equipped for self-publishing than it was maybe even 20, 30 years ago, especially with, with places like Amazon. You can be critical of them, but, it's really easy to get a book published through them. I not well, you know what I mean. There's
yes,
always
I
the
know what
hard
you
work. Yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
it makes it possible.
I will just say I did love having all the control over it. I got to design like every single page in there. I worked with a formatter. Her name's Nicole Frail. She was actually my developmental editor when I first started with trying to edit my novel. So she was the first professional editor I reached out to, and she worked for a publishing company. And I remember her telling me, hey, you've got something special here. You've got a lot of words that we need to cut back on, but you've got something special, and I don't think you should put it in a drawer and let it sit for years. And so that really helped me to keep going. So many things people told me just gave me little pushes, but getting to kind of come full circle with her and design the inside pages. And then I also worked with my best friend, Gwen Galiza, who is a graphic designer, and she designed the cover, which is so beautiful. I did a
Mhm.
mock cover myself. I barely knew Photoshop and it was awful. And she was like, oh my gosh, girl, we got to fix this. So then she transformed it into what it is now, which is way better than I could have ever imagined. But
Yeah.
that control is so nice to just be able to completely put the design and how you want it to look and feel into your project.
Yeah, one thing I'm hearing a lot of is that even authors who go through traditional publishing, often they are still responsible for their own promotion. It's starting to get that way more and more. So I can't remember who it was, but one guest said basically, so I'd be doing all this work anyway. Might as well just publish it myself, and that way it can
Right.
come out now rather than 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yes, that is true. And it's nice because I work in public relations. So I've
Mhm.
got some chops on how to get the word out about my book. but that is the case a lot. And I think a lot of publishers are looking for big platforms,
Hmm.
more so in the nonfiction world, but also in the fiction world, where you need to have a certain amount of followers or influence to where if you're sending out an email blast, like how many people is it going to reach? If you're posting on social media, how many people are seeing it to where it makes it so hard to one, get a publishing deal, but then two, the work is on you because you have that platform, hopefully, where you can promote it. So it's a lot of work no matter which way you go.
What through this process, what has been your biggest challenge, and what has been your biggest, well, let's call it a surprise or blessing through this?
Let's see, biggest challenge. I honestly think it was just feeling ready to publish because, like I mentioned, I've been holding onto it for 6 years.
Mm.
So during that time, I wrote it, I edited, I had a professional editor, I sent it to family and friends who were teachers and proofreaders. I had beta readers with girls who were in that demographic, so 12 to 18. And I think I still just never felt like, okay, now it's time. Like, this is the time for you to publish. I think I was like using getting an agent or a deal as a crutch of like, well, once that happens, then I'll publish. So I think just the biggest challenge was like getting out of my own way and being like, let's put it out there. It has been edited hundreds of times. Let's do this. And then let's see, surprise or a blessing. So when I decided, okay, I'm finally going to write this, I it was one of the most creative times in my life, which I look back on with like rose-colored lenses because it was so fun. I would get up at 5 a.m., light a candle, turn on some indie music, so artists like Jose Gonzalez, Lord Huron, and I would write for 1 to 2 hours or until I hit about 1,000 words. And I would do that 3 to 5 days a week. Sometimes I was writing at my job because it was a slow job, so I didn't get up at 5 a.m. every day. But there were days where the words were just flying, where my fingers couldn't type fast enough to keep up with my thoughts. And then there were other days where it was more of a struggle, but I would still do it because it would help me think about the next part of the story. Even if I had to force it out that day, it got my creative juices flowing. And I loved that ritual. It became something that I was excited to wake up for. I would have my writing mug. It was a specific mug and just get the words out. And it felt like I was doing something bigger than myself. And it just felt really refreshing to have a world that I was building. And I ended up actually dreaming about it. So, Stephanie Meyer, the author of the Twilight series, she talked about in an interview once how she started dreaming about werewolves and vampires and ended up writing it down. Clearly became the Twilight series.
Hmm.
Mine was kind of opposite. So I built the world, built the characters, and then I would start dreaming about maybe conflict that was going to happen next. Or I would start like writing sentences in my sleep and then wake up at 3 a.m. and have to like put it in a note or text myself. And my mom ended up getting some of those texts and other people too. And they're like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, sorry, it's just for my black ignore. Um, but yeah, I think just the blessing was that it was such a creative time where I was constantly in a flow of
Hmm.
imagination.
Yeah, yeah. I love it when we get into the zone almost. You're it's you get that rhythm going, and it's good. Again, to reference Ray Bradbury, he talked about his writing style, and or his how he wrote, and he would say like every morning I would blast myself up out of bed and reassemble in front of my typewriter, and just he said get up first thing in the morning, pound out 1,000 words, and he said it might be garbage or it might be good, doesn't matter, just get it out, and
Hmm.
that helps encourage and inspire that creativity, making the time to do it. That's it's another thing I hear a lot of, like anything, you gotta make the time and do it, and
Absolutely.
never know what will come from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend in high school who was a year older than me, and she started writing a memoir about the same time I was writing my book. And she was posting on Facebook every time she wrote, she'd be like, I wrote 1,000 words today. Whew, it was hard, but I got it out. Or, hey, I'm
Hmm.
up to this word count. and I'm going to be done by this day. It's my goal. And I don't think she even knows it, but she motivated me of like, okay, here's this person who's about my age, who's being determined, having the discipline to get up, right,
Hmm.
and keep going and share it publicly, which is terrifying. Like I didn't share with anyone that I was writing a book for a very long time just because I didn't know if it was going to happen or if it was actually going to get finished or anything. So I guess I tried to protect myself, but she was so vulnerable and that helped me. So I would love to be more vulnerable too in this process in the future. And yeah, I feel like just that discipline is so important.
Right. So I guess the big question is, what's next for you? You got more books simmering, or is that too far in the future yet?
Oh man, I've always thought there could be a sequel to The Catalyst, more with a focus on play. I can't say too much because it involves the ending,
Hmm.
but I've thought about that. However, I don't know that I would do that because of how long this has taken. But maybe one day. And then I've also been doing some freelance writing. So earlier this year, I got published with the LA Times. I wrote an opinion piece on people using their spare bedrooms to kind of medicate the loneliness epidemic. So people who work remotely, opening up their homes for people to stay, whether it's short term, long term, and finding community that way. So I've got a few more ideas for some articles. So we'll see how those go with pitching. But
Hmm.
I'm always thinking of something. The other night, I woke up and I wrote down a note in my phone of a story. And I don't even remember what it is now. I need to look at my note. But I was like, oh, I'm going to write that. And then the next day, I was like, I'm not ready. Like, I need to get the catalyst out. I'm not ready to write another story yet. I'm excited to celebrate this one first. But
Right.
you know me, I've always got ideas flowing.
Yep. Yep. I don't know. Creativity is just such a wonderful thing to explore that I think can get overlooked over other things, um, because creativity doesn't always pay the bills, you
Right.
know, and sometimes in our culture, we think, well, if it's not going to make you money, why do it? But, this is like you're saying, this is a very personal story for you, and it, one you had to tell, and, um, it needed to be written. And that expression of creativity is satisfying, you know, to yourself, to say I had a goal, I met it. I could express myself this way. I really encourage people to explore creativity in some way. And it's always worth the effort.
Absolutely. It feels so freeing to let that out of its cage, whether it's a story or a painting or whatever creative outlet you have. I feel like if it's stuck inside of you, you can feel it typically, especially if you are a creative person, and letting it out is just beautiful. And it becomes something maybe that you didn't know it was going to become. And sometimes it's just a good relief for that day, but then other times it becomes something that molds you and shapes you.
Right. Yeah. I think the next thing I need to do is to try my hand at karaoke. So, um,
Whoa.
there was a karaoke scene in your book that,
Yep.
I was laughing about because, my wife has started doing that a couple times. There's a cafe nearby that has a karaoke night, and she keeps telling me, you should try it. It's a lot of fun. Like,
That's so fun.
I
Is
don't
she
know
a
if I sing.
singer?
Yeah, she is. She
Okay.
beautiful voice, and then my daughter has a beautiful voice. Um, and my older son, he has a great voice as well. And then me and my middle son, we're just kind of like we're the audience to them, like somebody needs to be in the audience. So, but
Well, yeah, it makes it a lot easier if you are a singer. Like your wife's like, it's so fun. And you're like, yeah, because you can sing. I mean, for
right,
me,
well,
that's terrifying.
you're right, yeah, but it looks like a lot of fun. So I'm might have to try something new.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, um, I did also want to say this. I know it's kind of backtracking a little bit, but I'm glad you mentioned about the cover because I think the cover is stunning. I mean, just a stunning picture. But I love it. That's the Blue Hills, right?
The Blue
Uh,
Ridge
or Blue
Mountains.
Ridge Mountains. Yeah. We got to go on a vacation there a couple years ago, and it's just gorgeous.
It's stunning. Yeah, I
Yeah.
went on a hike there a few years ago after I wrote the book. And I was like, oh, I just want to stay here for so long. That blue hue,
Mm-hmm.
nothing like it.
Yeah. 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 So where can people find you online? Where do you hang out?
Yeah, so I am on all social media at Natmosphere, spelled Natmosfear. And then The Catalyst is available on any retailer, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Books A Million, even Walmart. And then on the Libby app as well. And my last name, it's kind of funny. It's spelled Bickel. So not like pickle like most people think.
I'm sure you've never been called that before, right?
Oh yeah, my husband has nightmares from
I'm sure.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to get this episode out and let people know about your book. It comes out October 1st. So by the time this episode drops, it'll be out and everyone will be reading it.
So
then, right?
exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will leave links in the show notes so people can find you and find the book. So thanks again for joining me today, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Art.
Thank you for listening to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast. You can check out the show notes to find out all the information, links, and books that we referenced in today's episode. If you'd like to help support the show, I'd love for you to share on your social medias, tell your bookworm friends, share with your author friends, and help us get the word out. If you'd like to help out in a financial way, there are links in the show notes where you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. You can find all episodes at bookshelfodyssey.com. And please follow us on my social medias. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And so until next time, happy reading, everyone, and take care.